Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Please be upstanding for the national anthem of the United Kingdom and Barbados, commencing first of all with the national anthem of the United Kingdom. I thank you. Thank you. Will you remain standing whilst we have Norma Paris to say the opening prayer, please? Norma Paris, thank you.
Good evening, all. Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us here safely, to give us this opportunity to contribute to such an important issue as the Constitution of Barbados. We pray that you would help us all to be open-minded, listen to each other, and that our concerns and issues will be taken on board and will be taken into account. Bless us all this evening, and we pray that you would grant us listening ears for all those concerns. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Norma. You may be seated now, ladies and gentlemen. We will now be addressed by Justice Christopher Blackman.
Mr. Master of Ceremonies, my fellow commissioners, representatives of the Barbados High Commission in the United Kingdom, ladies and gentlemen. I was very much looking forward to coming to the United Kingdom for this important work of the Constitutional Reform Commission. I regret that personal circumstances have prevented me from being with you in Reading this evening. The visit to the United Kingdom has been primarily funded by Impact Justice, which is an acronym for Improve Access to Justice in the Caribbean, year regional civil society sector reform project funded by the Government of Canada and administered within the Caribbean Law Institute Center, Faculty of Law, UWI Cave campus since 2014. The warrant of appointment given to the Commission on June 20, 2022 requires that we examine, consider, and inquire into the Constitution of Barbados and all other related laws and matters with the view to the development and enactment of a new constitution for Barbados, to make recommendations to the government on the reforms that will meet the circumstances of a 21st century Barbados, and to promote the peace, order, and good governance of the country, to provide for consideration a draft constitution, and to make recommendations on all matters which, in the Commission's opinion, are relevant to the attainment of the aims and objectives of the establishment of the Commission. Additionally, the warrant of appointment requires the Commission to consult the people of Barbados nationally and in the diaspora on the content of the Constitution and the desirable reforms. It is in that context, therefore, that the Commission, in the persons of Commissioner Adrian Bradford, Senior Counsel, a former Attorney General of Barbados, Marianne Redmond, an educator and currently president of the Barbados Secretary Teachers Union, and Sunmin Balbulia, a member of the pre-Republican committee which drafted the Charter of Barbados, supported by Gail Atkins, that the Director General in the Public Service and Chief Executive Officer of the Commission, look forward to the views and contributions of the Barbadian community in Reading as to what you think should be included in the Constitution. However, bear in mind that not everything can be so included. What we have to undertake to do is to listen, hear your concerns, and to reflect those views in the report which we are required to submit to Her Excellency the President on the completion of our work. My very best wishes to you for a successful evening and a productive discussion. Thank you so much for making provision for me to join you at this time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Blackman. I must say welcome to you all again. Thank you all for being here. Just a couple of things in terms of housekeeping. There is no plans to have a fire drill this evening. So should you hear a continuous ringing sound, please make yourself slowly and controlled through that door, down the stairs, and into the car park by the actual entrance to the car park. That is the assembly point in the unlikely and unfortunate circumstances should we have to endure a fire drill. At this moment in time, I must acknowledge the presence of the Deputy High Commissioner for Barbados here in the UK, Mr. Charles Morris, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here, Mr. Morris. Always a pleasure to have you in our company. I would also like to acknowledge the chairperson of BAFA, the Barbados and Friends Association here in Reading, Mr. Jeff Jones. Thank you for being here, Mr. Jones. It is now time to be introduced to our esteemed panel here. For on the 30th of November 2021, our wonderful country of Barbados became a republic. In fact, it's the newest republic in existence in the world today, under the presidentship of the most honorable Dame Sandra Mason. Of course, with this change, or with this event in our evolution as a country, becoming a republic, matters regarding the Constitution will have to be addressed. And this series of town hall meetings will do such as that. And we are grateful for our esteemed panel who have been mentioned by our opening speaker, Mr. Justice Blackman earlier. So it is my duty now to hand you over to our esteemed panel who will actually introduce each other and take it from there. Thank you very much indeed, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, Deputy High Commissioner, Mr. Jones, ladies and gentlemen of Reading, and those who have joined us from outside of Reading. Fellow Barbadians, it's a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you very much for coming out in this cold weather. Yes, it's cold for us, who come from a very hot climate. And I am Commissioner Suleiman Bulbulia. By way of disclaimer, Commissioner Adriel Braffett was to be the driver in this function, but he spent a little too much time on the other side this afternoon, and so I am the designated driver for this evening. Just a light joke. We are here, as our chairman pointed out, to listen to the views of Barbadians living in the United Kingdom. And we are here to listen, to record, and to take back your views, your opinions, your recommendations on what you want to see in the Constitution of Barbados as we go forward. As was mentioned, Barbados became a republic on November 30th, 2021. That was part of the journey from independence to republic, and now we're on the other leg of the journey where we reform our Constitution to be part of the 21st century and beyond. And that's why we are here. With us is Commissioner Adriel Braffett, as was mentioned, Commissioner Marianne Redmond, Director General Gail Atkins. Also on the commission, along with the chairman who you just met, Justice Christopher Blackman, we also have former Senator and President of the Senate, Kerry-Ann Eiffel. We have Senator the Reverend Dr. John Rogers. We have Senator Gregory Nichols. We have Christopher DeKiris, Sade Jemmett, and Khalil Koftiwala. So 10 persons make up the Constitutional Reform Commission, and the secretary to the commission is Professor Cynthia Barrow-Giles. So we will, our responsibility this evening is basically simple from our end. We are here to listen, because that is our mandate, that is our remit, that we hear the views of Barbadians at home and abroad. And we cannot begin to assume what you as Barbadians living in the United Kingdom would want to see in the Constitution. We would have to hear that from you directly. And that's what we would like to hear this evening, what it is that you would like to see in the Constitution going forward. What are the concerns that you have? What do you want us to report back to our commission and subsequently to the government of Barbados, where our report has to be handed in at the end of our journey. So what we are here to do, we have been mandated with this task. We have been working at it since June last year. We have had a number of town hall meetings in Barbados, getting the views from Barbadians. We have also opened up channels of communication via email, via WhatsApp, on a number that you can send a WhatsApp to, and you get your questions answered. We also have a direct line that you can call into and leave a message there, and someone will respond. And we have a website, CRC Commission. All that is on a document I think is being handed out. I'm not sure if it was circulated this evening. And it is there. We also have a Twitter account, Twitter Space, and we have on IG and Facebook. So we are using all the mediums available to us to interact with the general public and the public at large, and yourselves as well. And we invite you to participate, to get involved, to respond, and to submit your recommendations. If you don't want to do it this evening, you can do that in writing. There are many different ways that you can do so. So, as I said, our task here is to listen to what you have to give to us, and we hope that it will be a lively evening. So thank you very much for being here.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, this is your opportunity really to speak about what you think is actually that is desirable going forward for Barbados in this new journey as a republic. It's not necessarily a case of questioning what is happening, because it has happened now. We're on that journey. So it's a matter of really of issues which you think that perhaps, let's say some things that we have here in the UK that we think that could be actually had in the Caribbean, in Barbados. Matters like that. I mean, there's issues regarding healthcare and this sort of stuff when you go home and these type of things, you know. or accommodation, solicitors, etc. All these sort of things can be actually looked at now. This is the time to actually, for us to try and shape what is happening at home. So the floor is yours. If you have any sort of suggestions, input that you would like to do right now, this is your opportunity. Yes. Now the microphone there is where you will go. You will give your name and where you're actually residing, and if you belong to any particular organizations. So if that's your desire, and you start things going.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Is this on?
Yes, very clear.
Right. Okay. I've taken a look at various constitutions, and I feel that...
Give us your name again, sorry.
Sorry, Anderson Springer.
Good.
I reside in Reading, from St Andrew. St Simons, to be precise.
Like most of Reading.
Yeah. Now, one of the suggestions I would have is to have a section called Fundamental Rights. And I've been looking at some constitutions, and I like what the Swiss have and what they've got in Singapore. Our constitution, as it currently stands, says protection of fundamental rights and freedoms, plural, of the individual. I think it could be tighter by making it clear this is a section of fundamental rights. And a lot of constitutions tend to reflect that. That would be my first suggestion.
It's interesting, Andy, that you mentioned Singapore, because my youngest brother has been living in Singapore since the mid-90s. And Singapore always mentions Barbados as an example.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes, we can learn a lot from them. I've also visited there and was impressed.
Panelists.
Thank you very much, Mr. Springer, and happy to hear that you're from St. Andrew. I also have some roots in St. Andrew as well. Yes, I may not look that way, but I do. Actually, fundamental rights and freedoms have been engaging our commission the most over the period of time that we have been functioning, and in many different ways. So you are absolutely bang on when you say that fundamental rights and freedoms and responsibilities has taken a lot of time and will be there. So yes, it has been, and there are a number of submissions that have come in regarding the issues of fundamental rights and freedom, but if any of the other commissioners want to add.
Well, I could add that in 1966, when our Constitution was enacted, the kind of vision that they have probably didn't take into consideration things like the internet, for example. And we don't imagine living without the internet going forward. So something like that, believe it or not, you might think that would be incorporated into a modern constitution, that the right to a safe internet, or the right to access to the internet. Because going forward, unless we reverse, it is the norm. Something like the right to health care that we take for granted, the right to education at a certain level that we have. So without doubt, we recognize and accept that we're going to have to expand our fundamental rights provisions. And there are lots of new rights that people are talking about. The right to a safe environment. Again, the environmentalists are telling you that what we are doing is that we are killing the planet. We are, in fact, killing ourselves. So the right to a clean environment, i.e., for example, or as an adjunct to that, would be the right to drinking water. You know, there are still some people across Barbados that have problems in terms of accessing water, you know, continuously, etc. So when we sit down, as we will start doing within the next month or two, these are the kind of things that we're going to have to trash out in terms of what we're hearing and what we believe are the new rights in particular that should be incorporated into a modern constitution. Our reading and what we've been told by the professionals who study constitutions, and that's what they do, is that they say that we should be thinking in terms of a constitution that will survive for the next 20 or 30 years, but acknowledging that things will come along, and that it's almost mandatory that every 10 years or so you have a fresh look at your constitution and see whether or not that there are things that are working, see what is working, see what isn't working, what needs to be changed, etc. So thank you for that.
Yes, do come forward, ma'am, and come to the microphone and give us your name and where you reside, and if you belong to any particular organizations. Thank you.
Okay, my name's Maxine Hamilton. I am not a Bajan.
Say that again, please. Bring the microphone down to you so we can hear you nice and clearly. They're filming this here, right? So we want everybody to hear them nice and clearly.
My name's Maxine Hamilton, and I'm not a Bajan, but I've been asked by Bajan colleagues because they knew I was down here to put a question to you. So I'm here on their behalf.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So the question has been, within your new constitution, within the convention, will there be specific rights for children and adults with disabilities and additional needs to enable them to have access to education, training and employment so that they can continue to be an integral part of the communities? Also, that they are safeguarded by and within education, health and social care.
Well, again, Maxine, I'm going to answer this because I like the easy questions. The hard ones I can tell them to answer. It is not by accident that one of the members of our commission is the former Senator Carrie-Ann Eiffel, who actually I think is chair of the umbrella bodies of citizens with disabilities. So Carrie-Ann is very passionate about this area, and I think in appointing Carrie-Ann, the government itself has signaled that this is an area that needs our special attention. We have in fact received presentations from the organizations whose members make up the various organizations involved with children and/or individuals with disabilities. Is an area that we are going to spend lots of time on, I suspect. And I have no doubt that whatever we come up with, that it will reflect the fact that we accept that all citizens, regardless of race, physical impediments, mental impediments, that all citizens should have a right to live in Barbados and be able to maximize their potential, which would include the right to education, freedom of movement, all the things that you mentioned. I will also say, however, which is a general comment, which is that the Constitution cannot provide for everything. And in other words, the Constitution will have broad outlines. So it will provide that citizens with disabilities should have access to A, B, C, or D, but that's a guide. But then it's up to the government to provide the relevant laws to ensure that everything else that they require is covered within the laws of Barbados. So the Constitution will not provide that they should have access to parking or a certain number of parking spots, at schools or public institutions, etc. But that's covered under the Town Planning Act. If you submit an application for town planning to have a public establishment, town planning says that you must have a certain number of parking spaces for persons with disabilities. That's not in the Constitution, but that's an example of what I say, that within the broad framework of our laws, that in fact that you will also find that we would incorporate laws to ensure that that's addressed. I hope that helps.
Okay, can I just ask?
If I may, sorry.
Yeah.
Come a bit closer to the mic, ma'am.
Sorry, say what you're going to say, then, because you may answer my question.
If I may add, there's now a draft bill dealing exactly with that. Provisions for persons with disabilities in our island. In relation to children, the government of Barbados is now pursuing profound educational reform. And as part of that reform, there's going to be special interest in and provisions for children with disabilities. So, as Adriel said, Everything can't be in the Constitution. The Constitution will provide a framework that would lead to the framing of specific, discrete legislation to deal with certain issues in the society.
Okay, that's fine. I was going to say, because obviously within the UN Convention, Article 24 is very much specific about disabilities. So it's whether or not you would carry some of that over within your own constitution.
And with the draft bill, there was a lot of consultation with the society at large. For example, we were involved as trade unions as to what should be included in that bill. And many other groups and stakeholders were also involved. It is quite a progressive potential piece of legislation in that regard.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, do make your way to the microphone, sir. Just let us know your name and where you reside and any organizations which you may belong to.
My name is Pierre Burnett, born and raised in Reading. My question is quite a fundamental question. So I've heard questions and discussions even this evening about entitlement under the Constitution and what people are entitled to, what's protected. My question is kind of right to the fundamental core of what is a citizen or who is a citizen. So at the moment, if you're first generation, you can get your citizenship by descent, but my child, so grandchildren, great-grandchildren, are not entitled by right to Bajan citizenship. Given some of the potentially the tenuous nature of British citizenship that's just been changed, the law's changed, so my British citizenship can be removed from me if the Home Secretary of the United Kingdom decides he or she wants to remove it. What changes, that's a positive question, what changes are going to be made to ensure that grandchildren and great-grandchildren of Bajan people that came here and America and Canada that can benefit from Bajan citizenship by right, not by, please can I have it?
Yes.
Here's my birth certificate, here's my parents' birth certificate, here's my grandparents' birth certificate.
Your question is very relevant because if I just interject there, when the late Tom Adams came to Reading in 1984, my younger brother asked him the same question. At that time, as the sons of born Barbadians, we were actually qualified for automatic citizenship at that time. That was then. Perhaps you could elaborate now, panel.
Mariana's going to volunteer.
Okay. If those of you who have access to this, it spells out in chapter 2 all of the ways in which presently you can acquire Barbadian citizenship. It goes into great detail as to what is possible through the Constitution and through the existing law. Now, Barbados is at a stage where the country is in dire need of persons to return or to move into the country to boost our population numbers. Our family planning, education, and programs have perhaps worked too well since the 60s, and our population has not grown at the rate at which it should have grown so that we can even attempt to maintain the present quality of life in relation to, especially in relation to the care that we have to provide for our aging citizens. We now have what is really a first world population pyramid in terms of the structure, the demographic structure of our population. We have very many of our people 50 years and over. And so to be able to provide the quality of care to which Barbadians have been accustomed, we have to have more people working and contributing in relation to taxation and NIS contributions. And so government is looking to attract persons into the country to boost that critical mass of people that we need to be working and making the necessary contributions. And to that extent, the plan, as far as I am aware, as far as has been stated, is to attract the children of Barbadians and the children of Barbadians back to Barbados to work and make the contributions both to population growth and to the economy that they need to. And to that extent, the whole matter of citizenship is going to be addressed, and it is going to be made very easy for your children and grandchildren to return to Barbados, have their status regularized, and make the type of contribution that is necessary.
Yeah, because I would say it's very, very important, because for the next generation down, the grandchildren and great-grandchildren here, yes, I take my daughter to Barbados. She understands Barbados, but you know, Barbados is kind of rejecting her a little bit, because at the moment, today, she can't become Barbadian. So it's very, very important. If we want to engage with that next generation down, and the generations that are yet to be born, that has to change.
That is going to be addressed. That will be addressed. In some ways, we have no choice.
Correct.
Not if we are to continue in the way to which we have become accustomed, and to continue to provide for our elderly people, including myself very soon when I retire, in the way that I expect to be provided for.
Thank you, Mr. Burnett. If nobody else has any questions, well, I'm sure people got questions. Yes, gentleman's coming in.
He's coming to adjust the mic. No? Yeah. Go on.
Hey. Right, so I'm actually coming to make a contribution, even though that I'm working for the evening. My name is Ezra, and I am from Boscobel.
Ezra. Surname, please.
Hines. Same as yours, Hines.
Hines.
We will talk after.
It is true after all these years.
Right. So just to jump on the back of that, because I wanted to make a contribution on a totally unrelated topic, but just to what the gentleman just said. Now, he mentioned the legislation in the UK. I think the act was in like 1981. They removed what the US have, which is the whole just solely thing, which means that as long as you are born on the land, you inherit the right to the land. And they passed the Immigration Act in 1983. And this act removed citizenship automatically from people who were born here. Now, I found this out rather a matter like perhaps by getting a daughter. And when she was born, I found it quite strange that she had no citizenship or no claim to UK citizenship. But then when I went to the High Commission, she was not Bajan yet, which is quite strange to me. So she had to get citizenship by descent. So, and that is a process that I actually had to go through, write application and stuff like that. But her birth certificate says that she was UK born, and we went to the registration office and all that. So my question is, in that 6 weeks or whatever, however long it took to process, what was her citizenship? It's kind of like a no man's land, right? Which I don't think is fair to any child born
But you understand.
That's your daughter?
No. No, she speaks a lot more clearly than that. But yeah, I don't think for that time between, a document leaving here, getting to Barbados, being looked at and coming back, that the children of anyone, and myself, I only came to the UK a few years ago, so currently I still am not a citizen of the UK. So I'm here, like many Bajans, I've come to study and stay on and working. And yeah, any child born to any of us is in that same position. So I would bring it back to the Constitution. Surely the Constitution has to make some sort of concrete provision for Barbadians born in that situation.
But as well, that's an unusual situation from the point of view of that your conundrum was caused by the UK as opposed to by Barbados, because their constitution is quite clear. But what Marianne is saying is that we envisage that in fact, that a new constitution based on what we are hearing, and that, in other words, let me just say this. What Mr. Hines, who forgets that you are also Hines, said that his younger brother in 1984 had the same conversation with Tom Adams about citizenship by descent, etc. We believe that in 2024, that in fact that this conversation should be negated, because it is, I think government has already indicated that it would like to see the population grow. We have been having diaspora meetings and come back to Barbados, etc., for a number of years, because we have accepted at the political level that there, in particular, and forgive me, Connell and Mr. Jones, etc., that there, in particular, that there's some very bright young Barbadians who we would like to attract back to the country if we are to, in fact, reach the kind of first world status that we would like to reach, right? So like yourself and like your daughter, the young people who have ideas that I can't understand, and who can take up this and do things with it from the time they're 3 or 4 years old, and like how I take mine to my daughter, even, and say, can you please do X or Y for me? And she said, well, Daddy, well, you don't understand this. In 2 seconds, they'll give it back to me. And she starts very short of saying to me, you're an idiot, you don't understand these things. But the point, though, the serious point is that, we want to attract our youngest and brightest, not just the footballers and the cricketers, etc., into Barbados, who would have a vested interest in seeing the country be, in fact, the Singapore that Mr. Hines mentioned. Because we have always compared ourselves to Singapore, but we have not reached that level. But hopefully during my lifetime, if not during my lifetime, during your lifetime and your children's lifetime, that in fact, that we will say we have finally reached the time of level that when people talk about first world nations, Barbados is one of them. So we are fairly confident, even though we, as a commission, that we have not discussed it, but we're fairly confident that the time has come and that it will happen. Fairly confident.
Thanks. I'll come back to me.
Sorry, I should also add that in fact, you remember the point that I made in terms of that the Constitution cannot provide for everything, right? So if the Constitution provides that your daughter should automatically become a citizen of Barbados, right? Then the law should provide, and if it doesn't, then the courts will provide that it should happen with immediacy. In other words, that it shouldn't take 6 weeks or 12 weeks or 3 months or or a year.
Yeah, and that is the key point that
right.
I was trying to raise at the time.
So one will follow from the other.
Right, because the documentation naturally
one
will
follow,
take.
Yeah,
but to apply for descent, to me, that's the problem.
Yeah, but there's a process. But what I'm saying to you is that once it happens, it will follow one after the other, because whether we accept it or not, right? There will be some kind of a process. So someone has to fill out the form or do something and send to my friend here who will then send it to my friend somewhere else or otherwise or sign off. So there will always be a process, and there will always be a vetting to ensure that nothing on the hand is taking place, etc. But whether or not it will, if you apply today, what's today? If you apply today the 13th, right? It should provide that from the 13th day of March 2023, regardless of whether or not you receive it on the 24th. Right? But immediacy is going to be the key.
Thank you, Mr. Hines. Yes, Andy Springer again.
Sorry, I must confess an interest in this topic. My second question stemmed from being in Barbados in December and January as party to discussions on pension rights. And pension rights in this context should apply to public servants and MPs. We have a provision in our constitution on protection of pension rights. I think there's a need to strengthen that considerably because of ambiguity. I'm sure some of you have listened to call-in programs like Brass Tacks. I remember listening to someone who's worked for about 8 years in the public service, and then they don't have any pension rights. Now, normally that's a pro rata thing. So my point is a simple one. Can we have greater clarity on the issue of pension rights for public servants, including MPs?
Sorry, I can call you Anderson, right? Yeah. Sorry, Anderson, the reason why I leaned over is because I actually thought it was clear. I always thought it was 10 years. And so I'm not sure where the ambiguity is. I think what happens is that for NIS, for NIS, you must have a certain number of contributions. Right. And that's where people tend to fall down, especially persons who are not engaged with government. A good illustration is, on a personal level, for example, I worked in the British Virgin Islands, and I recognized that, in fact, that I needed to have contributions for 10 years. And I ticked off my thing to ensure that I qualified. So when I left, I knew that I'd qualified for pension, right? Similarly, I think for NIS, and I don't remember the number, for NIS, you must have a certain number of contributions. And one of the challenges that we have had is in particular for the self-employed, because many of them worked for years upon years upon years upon years and never made a contribution. And then reached retirement age and went to NIS and said, well, where's my pension? And I said, but you're short X number of contributions, so you don't qualify under the law. And they spend lots of time and energy saying to people, make your contributions, make your contributions. Otherwise, you don't qualify. And lo and behold, of course, what happens? What happens is that government being government then makes an ex gratia payment and pays something via the welfare because the person, needs to be topped up. Otherwise, the government still have to look after them. But I think the pension, I think the confusion is between the pension in terms of your right for qualification and then under the NIS in terms of the number of contributions that you need to make to qualify, if I'm right about that.
I was a civil servant here, and I only spent 7 years.
Good, Mike.
Then get a pro rata.
Right.
But we don't do that.
The way it works here, you get a pro rata.
Right.
In other words, 7 over 40 or whatever number of qualifying years it is, especially if you've contributed.
But you don't get a monthly payment of that.
No, we get a
Right.
payment from
Sorry. Ms. Atkins, who's been in the service for 65 years or thereabout, I needed to depend on her, who just said under our system in the scenario that you described, that they're actually prorated and give you a one-off lump sum payment. Yeah. Okay.
Just before you go any further on panel, our speaker who just spoke, Mr. Springer, does he sound like any person that you know that works on BOB? It sounds exactly like a particular.
I only listen to music. I don't listen to.
In that case, Ronald McIntosh. The Calypso name,
Ronnie Clark.
Ronnie Clark, yes.
Oh,
He sounds exactly like him.
yeah.
I think so. I think he does.
I listen. I don't practice law up here, but that sounds like slanderous to me.
I will give
Whilst my friend is going to the mic, I should add that, just to be clear, even though we're not encourage you to field questions to us, but part of our remit actually is to also examine any laws that would touch on the Constitution. Now, one of the things that jumped out in my head is that just Saturday night when we were up in nice warm Birmingham, the question about legal services and how long it takes, et cetera, arose. And even though that's not a constitutional issue, it touches upon your right to property and access to justice, et cetera. So if you have, queries like that, as I said, although it's not although it's not something that will be in the Constitution, you can see how it would touch on your rights, right? So access to justice, whether or not in modern Barbados it should take 3 years to have property transferred from A to B, whether or not it should take 2 years to get letters of administration, right? All these are things that in a modern Barbados that I dare to say that even though that they're not in the Constitution, that has to be addressed if we are to move the country forward. And as I said, and it touches upon your right to property. And therefore, if we don't do it, I'm fairly sure the courts will have to address it, because you really look as a practicing attorney, you come across where someone's waiting on an estate. Like I have a client who's waiting on an estate to be finalized, and the only monies that they have to depend on are the monies that was in the deceased's account. And, it's taking a bit of time, and she's almost reached a stage where she's saying to me, but how am I going to pay to look after my mother? But the money is there. So something wrong with the system that does not ensure that there's an easy transition under those circumstances. So, as I said, that's not a constitutional issue, for example, but it touches upon your right to property, access to justice, etc.
Mr. Moderator, thank you. My name is Gilly Smith. I have a list of things that I was going to raise to the panel, and you just touched on one of them.
Mr. Smith, what's your first name, please?
I said Gilly Smith. Gilly Smith, yeah.
Right.
Gilmore, Gilmore, but everybody calls me Gilly. The first one that I would like to raise is on the human rights. There's a lot of talk now of legalizing the LGBTQ, and that's not in the citizenship. The other one is the citizenship entitlement. Are you going to retain the grandfather rights, which is, as my daughter said, now that my daughter has moved to St. Lucia, her children now are St. Lucian, though they're British, and should also be Barbadian, because I am a Barbadian, and she was born here. And this is something which a lot of people are looking at now, especially if you have the young ladies who are Bajan women who are marrying to other Caribbean islanders. You touched on the property rights, the freedom of movement in the CARICOM, that there some people, when they go down to the Caribbean, even though they have British citizenship and Caribbean citizenship, they have to pay money to move from one island to the island if there's more than 3 months. Safeguarding access to the beach, which was relevant in the past couple of weeks, especially in the Joes River, and the access to the beach with sandals. Elections and voting, would they still be available to the diaspora, to those living in the diaspora? Is it going to be extended to those living in the diaspora? And the sale of the passport to other outsiders or other people living in other countries, especially to those living in Russia and other areas now which is contentious. And dealing, as you just said, dealing with attorneys to get business done in a timely manner.
Mr. Smith.
That is all.
Gilly, don't move. Let me put you on the spot. Because you raised these issues. What do you think about the sale of passports? Should we or should we not do it?
I don't think we should sell the sale of passports to outsiders just to raise money, especially in this climate now where you have the war in the Ukraine and a lot of the Russians are buying citizenships in Qatari and Antigua.
So your submission then is that you do not believe that Barbados should go the route of having a citizen by investment program?
Barbados is a very small island, and if you sell a passport, you give them a right to a country, and if they bring the country into disrepute, especially if you're involved in the money laundering and things like that, this is the thing that I was looking at.
Good. What do you think about voting rights? Do you believe that you should have a right to vote in Barbados if you don't live in the country once you're a citizen?
A lot of countries has that right. A lot of countries has that.
What do you have an opinion on it? You can't just raise it and get away with it.
Well, no, I don't have an opinion on it, but as a born Bajan, I think that I should have the right to vote in Barbados.
Right.
I was born in Barbados.
Yeah.
But my daughter, we had an argument about this. I said, I was born in Barbados. You don't know much about Barbados, only as a visitor.
So your daughter who lives in St. Lucia, who is now St. Lucian?
No, she's not St. Lucian.
She's not St. Lucian as yet?
She's Barbadian and...
she's Barbadian and British, living in St. Lucia.
Yeah, but it's my grandchildren who are...
Work with me.
Yeah.
I'm with me. That she should be allowed to vote in Barbados even though she lives in St. Lucia?
I said no.
No.
But she insists that she knows more about Barbados than I do. And she should have the right to vote because she listened to CBC and down to brass tacks every day.
And so, but the fact though is that once she's Barbadian and lives in and arrives in Barbados, once she's on her voters list, she does.
I understand that, but voting by selection, is that the way that we should go?
Well, that's the kind of thing that we need to discuss. Brazil had elections, I think, last year. And I remember distinctly seeing lines in New York City, Brazilians voting. And I don't mean embassy staff, or I mean ordinary Brazilians voting in their election, even though they didn't live in, and I think there's some countries, Australia comes to mind.
You can't vote here in American elections.
Correct. Right,
Americans
indeed,
can
yes.
vote here
Right, yes. Right. So, if that's...
And Australians.
Right, yes. So if that's something that you're suggesting, or that you would like to see happen, then it's really not for us to pull it out of you. It's for you to make the recommendation so that we can say that it was raised to us in Reading. So that's why
this is the reason why I brought it here, is that you can still raise it. That it was raised in Reading.
But all you did, Gilly, is that you listed a few things. All right. So I could have left here saying, well, according to Gilmore, who's also called Gilly, that we should not have voting, that we should sell passports, And
No, you're putting it wrong.
but if you don't tell me, I can say, I can interpret what you said, how I feel like. That's the point I'm making.
I understand that. But
Right. We're in agreement now. We're in agreement now.
I understand where you're coming from.
Right. The issue of
you want me to put myself out there and says
No.
sell a passport. We shouldn't sell a passport to a Saudi Arabian.
Right. With respect, your comment though about freedom of movement though.
In the CARICOM. Yeah.
Right. I can't comment about other islands, but certainly
we have an agreement that any CARICOM citizen has freedom of movement within the
yes,
CARICOM.
once they're qualified, etc. So that's why I'm about to say to you that I cannot comment on other islands. But to my knowledge, you don't pay, anything once you qualify. And you can prove your qualifications, etc. And then automatically you have the right to to live and reside in Barbados, right? But as I said, I can't comment on whether or not it's being adhered to by other islands. In terms of the human rights issues, I think if it's one issue that we've heard and I will continue to hear about is the issue of human rights, and in particular the LGBTQI community, and I will say I don't have a position one way or the other about this issue, and of course it's linked to the whole issue in terms of same-sex relationships and marriage and rights, etc. But what I will say is that the most comprehensive submissions that we've received to date have been from that community. So persons or individuals who have other views and stuff, if people believe that in fact that they can simply say, well, that you shouldn't do X or Y or Z, and people come with a reasoned position that in law makes sense, that as a country who says that everyone should have a right to water and food and medicine and education, etc., then you see where most countries will end up, unless of course there are contrary reasonable positions that can say otherwise. So let's see what happens from here. But we've received, honestly, we've received some very comprehensive and detailed, well-reasoned arguments from that community.
And the last one is dealing with the attorneys to get business done in a timely manner.
Oh, that's for Mary. I don't know if they were attorneys. That's Mary.
And linked to that is, should the MPs have to declare their interests before, or anyone who is either in the Senate or in the judiciary?
Yeah, but I think we're going in that direction. There's a draft Integrity and Public Life bill, which I support in principle. I haven't read the bill, so I can't say I support the bill, but I strongly support in principle that in fact that you should declare your assets before you get involved in stuff. And even when you do declare your assets, you still get criticized. So I see my best friend Boris Johnson being criticized for earning 85% of the income of I only say that sarcastically. I don't know the gentleman, of 85% of the income of MPs from outside of Parliament for the year, and stuff. But at least you have a system that requires him to declare or them to declare as MPs, and I think that's the right way to do it.
And what about safeguarding the rights to the access to the beach?
But I think most Barbadians are passionate about that. And from what I read up to a couple of days ago, that 40, 50 years after Gabby signed JAP, that really that we should not be in a position where we're still arguing about rights, access to the beach. I remember as a student being told that I can't walk past Paradise at the time. I was heading up to UE, and the security guard told me that and this is 1982, told me that I can't walk past there and stuff. So I lived the experience. I also remember my wife is from Chelsea Road, and those of you who know Chelsea Road it's on Bay Street, and then you have the yacht club, and the yacht club is kind of, well, Mary might be able to describe it better. The yacht club is kind of enclosed on two sides. So ideally, if you want to get down to the beach there, you have to come down to the yacht club, which you can't, but you can access it by either coming under the water by the, that's a Holiday Inn, right?
Yes.
By the Holiday Inn, come on the pier by the Holiday Inn.
Radisson now.
By Radisson now, right. So you need to come onto the pier or come down the other beach, etc.
Browns Beach.
Right, and stuff. And I remember as a youngster being asked, well, why are you over here? Well, that was the time when I used to walk up with my switchblade and I was rude, etc. So I can't repeat publicly what I said to the person. But the point, though, is that, as far as I'm concerned, there shouldn't be any beaches in Barbados, and it's something that we need to address, that Barbadians shouldn't have a right to have access. And I feel very passionate about it, also because historically, and this is the point that I dwell on most. Historically, the beach wasn't prime property for the people who control the economy.
Yeah.
They live on the plantations. It's the slaves who were thrown off the plantations and set up
on the beach.
on the beaches. Yeah. Then over time, it's all changed, and then they came and they bought out the land, etc. I know you're being told, well, you can't go onto the same beach that your great-grandfather and great-great-great-great-grandfather used to live on and cook and fish and do everything for a living. We should reject that.
So is this a town and country planning matter?
Well, yes, but it's also a question of ownership of the land in terms of, I think, is it the high water mark?
Yes.
Right, where it begins and ends and stuff. So it's beyond my capacity. I don't know about that part of it, but I do know. I do know that as government we can have it both ways. So in other words, you can't say to a landowner, you can't say to Sandals that I'm going to charge you land tax for up to here, and then Sandals say to you, okay, fine, well, I'm going to put my benches here because this is what I'm paying for, and then you say, well, no, but you can't do that because this belongs to the public. So it needs clarity as far as I'm concerned, but needs to be made clear that in fact the beach access should be for everyone and stuff. Well, then you just.
Sorry, excuse me.
Right, yeah.
The engineer is shouting. We can't have any talking before the microphone because the recording.
Right. What Gilly is saying is that, with climate change, the beaches will change, et cetera. But I mean, that's what the law is there for. It changes accordingly. It will change accordingly.
Remember, this is going live to Barbados, right? So you've got to speak in the microphone.
To me, it begs the question, should we restrict who can purchase land in Barbados, as they have done in some other islands? Is it the Bahamas, if my memory serves me correctly, or Bermuda?
It is, Anderson, it is not our way. It is not our way right now. It is. That's all I can say. It's not our way, and certainly I wouldn't sit here and tell you that I have a view that in fact that Barbados should only be available for Barbadians to purchase. I know there's some countries that's the route that they went and have gone. There are many Barbadians who believe that in fact that because we have opened the door to allow every Tom, Dick, and Harry to purchase land, that has caused the price of land to appreciate considerably. which is why the average Barbadian, inverted commas, have been suffering in terms of being able to purchase a piece of land, and that government is therefore going to have to intervene to ensure that they subsidize land for persons above or below a certain threshold, so that everyone still have the ability to purchase a piece of the rock, as we say. So whether we go the route of only allowing citizens to own the land, or we don't, the fact is that any serious government should have some mechanism in place to ensure that all Barbadians have a chance to own a piece of the rock, because you're a maid, or, and this is not a derogatory statement, or someone who works at a gas station, whose salary is not a certain amount, they shouldn't live with a view that they will never ever be able to afford a piece of land in Barbados. We must find some mechanism to give them hope and give them a realistic expectation that if they take certain steps that they would be able to.
Are you thinking then that perhaps there's some parcels of land, some areas of Barbados that government should own and then perhaps lease, so that the land remains vested for generations of Barbadians?
Gilly, we can't have a private conversation with you. You're either going to have to go to the mic.
Yes. Can we have another contribution, please? I can see some people itching to get up, but there. Oh, come forward, ma'am. Do join us.
Hello, good evening. My name's Anita Whitaker. I'm from, I live in London. I have Barbadian citizenship. My mother is Barbadian from St. George, specifically Glebe.
Ms. Whitaker, stop.
Yes.
My friend here, we didn't get his first name. We didn't get Gilly's first name. What is your first name also?
Oh, I did say it.
I know, yes.
Yes, Anita Whitaker.
Anita. Okay, Anita. Fine. Sorry, I am 61, so my ear is not the best.
Oh, no, worry. Do you know, I'm a broadcaster. I've got a very big mouth. So being close to the mic, I'm trying to do my radio voice so that I don't blow the speakers in here, okay? Maybe I'll stand back and I can just speak my normal tone. Is that clear enough? Can everybody hear?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
I think when you came close to the mic, you were fine. Come close to the mic.
Do my radio voice, yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay, so there were a few points that I wanted to raise that actually had been discussed, but I think to put my name on the record to say that I think it's really important in regards to the citizenship of the next generation, the diaspora, and legacy building. There's a discussion over bringing people to Barbados, but I run a company that manages and supports young people in education. How do we enthuse them to be able to go to Barbados and give back, as it were, and to share those skills internationally? And what can we put within the Constitution? Because I'm reading through it, but I don't see anything around that link around education and skills sharing and that legacy building and that capacity building for the next generation. I'm not to be rude, but I'm very aware that there are actually a lot of the older generation here. And what worries me, and when I speak to my mother and my grandmother, that actually once they've moved on, once they've passed on, that actually the next generations down don't have that cultural link to Barbados to continue a legacy. And it's something that I'm working on with my children and the young people that I have access to and work with. But not everybody is going to be doing that and has the ability to do that. So how can we create something within the Constitution that really focuses on ensuring that legacy build?
Let me try to answer that at least partly, which is that I gave us an out earlier by saying that the Constitution cannot provide for everything. Right? That's the first thing, right? So that it can provide that your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren would automatically become Barbadians. The challenge that we have, and it's not just, so it's not a constitutional issue, it's a challenge that we have as Barbadians, the deputy have, and that Betty has, and that the High Commission have, etc., that Gilly has, and Mr. Jones and Mr. Hines and young Mr. Hines, etc., is that we may be passionate about Barbados, right? Is that how do we transmit that passion? I don't know the answer, but that's our responsibility to ensure that we build that interest in the next generation who were born outside of Barbados, that in fact, that when they think in terms of where they want to go on holiday, where they would like to buy a second home, where they would like to retire, where they would like to live and work, that Barbados comes first. That's what we need to drive. We had the Welcome Stand program over the last 2 years, etc. I think some analysis would probably have to be done, if it has not been done, in terms of how many Barbadians living outside of Barbados, decided, you know what, this is a fantastic opportunity for me to go home. I'll go to Barbados and work, etc. I know quite a few young people from Toronto who actually took advantage of it, and because if there's one of the good things out of COVID, really is the fact that many organizations recognize that, you know what, you don't have to be in office to produce, and to produce to the capacities that you would expect someone who would work from 8 to 4 to produce, etc. But as I said last Friday night, as I said Saturday night, further up the road or across the road, one of the things that saddens me is when I used to drive around St. Philip, and I still see them, is a number of houses that are empty, that were built by persons who came here and worked on the railroad, etc., on the buses, etc. But their children have no interest in moving to Barbados, and the houses are there and going to pieces, right? Because that's also a failure in terms of not the family, but in terms of us, in terms of being able to say to these young people or youngest people or whatever, but you have an asset in Barbados. Why would you let it go to ruin? Barbados is your home. Come back to Barbados, or in some cases, come to Barbados, because there are realistic opportunities for you in Barbados, and in particular in this technological age, that in fact that you need not sit, in London, or in Birmingham, or in Reading, to work, that you can actually sit in Barbados and still have your job in the UK. And it's a challenge. I don't have the answer, but I know as a collective that's our challenge. That's what we need to work on.
Let me just add that we as a commission receive a very comprehensive document on engaging diaspora from Senator Charleston Bradford. And it was an excellent document, and he outlined a number of countries that have found a way of engaging the diaspora within their laws and legislation. And it's perhaps something that you can look at in terms of submitting a very valuable document with good research as to how we as Barbadians can engage the diaspora in a meaningful way, that we can engage the young people and encourage them to look at Barbados as a place to work, to live, and to invest in.
So you put yourself out there.
Yes.
I'm going to be contacting you.
Okay.
I'm currently working on a project with the Prince's Trust, London Zoo, and my cousin, Professor Derek Murray from University of West Indies. So we're creating a project at the moment to make that happen.
Good.
Because I felt very passionately that not enough has happened in that sense from what I can see. I can't speak for everybody, and I've spoken to in depth with Mr. Connell over there, who has become my new best friend, and I'm not letting go of that fantastic resource. But also, I'd like to say that obviously we've got this here. You've got this. You talked about all the social media links, how people can connect. Yes. But had you contacted any of the educational establishments to actually involve the younger generations? You mean in Barbados? In the UK. Okay, well, we haven't contacted educational institutions in the UK. So in regards to how you engage with the younger people and let them know that this was happening, that hasn't happened. And that's why you're not, if you're not engaging in their space, then they're not going to be able to engage in these spaces, and we're not going to be able to help to really build that legacy.
Right.
So
what we can ask you to do is to submit to us a list of contacts. Betty will probably best answer as well from this end. Okay.
So in preparing and planning the sessions here in Birmingham, Reading, of course, and London, to attract that demographic that you're speaking about, we did Facebook, we did Instagram, we did Twitter. I also contacted what I call influencers, right? And they're young people, as you know. I like 5 influencers in different areas, DJ who are into entertainment, who are into culture, and we asked them to put the information upon their websites, you know, like their group chats and all of that. So we reached out. We reached out to, because we wanted to hear from the young people as well. So we did go that route. But unfortunately, you know.
Sorry.
Thank you for being here, because you're young.
Sorry, Betty.
Yes, sir.
Betty, however, our experience is that, in fact, they're not going to come to meetings like this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
But they may engage on a Twitter space.
But we have a Twitter, for
Exactly.
example.
We have Twitter.
Even your commission
No.
set
So what I'm suggesting is that
Right.
if you believe that it might be useful for us to do something like that, then
Correct.
let's just do it.
We can
Okay,
do a
that's
we can do
fine.
a Twitter.
I'm
We have
fine
done
with
Twitter
that.
town halls
Right.
in Barbados.
Let's
Yes.
We
just
can
do
do a
it.
Twitter town hall.
Because like I said, we have to meet the young people where they are.
Yeah.
And they're not going to come and sit in a forum like this and, you know, have an opinion or express anything. We have to meet those people where they are. The majority of them, they're on their phones. They're in their group chats. And if we can, like you said, they're on Instagram, IG, and Twitter, if we can find a way of how we can connect with them and create a marriage or relationship, of course, we can then start to get some sort of buy-in from that level or from that specific demographic. All right? Thank you.
Thank you. Oops. I was going to say, to add to that point, my son studied government and politics at A-level and is at university, and actually is on the debate class. And somebody like him, rather than maybe going through the influencer route unless they're interested specifically in politics, that actually those are the establishments and groups then you can tap into. But I'm quite happy to support that moving forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anita.
Hi, good evening. Anderson Cornell, living in Reading, from Britain's Hill.
What's the first name?
Britain's Hill is St. Michael.
Sorry,
if you don't know
Anderson
where it is.
Connell? Anderson Connell.
From Britain's Hill.
I think I just want to ask a general question, really, because I've been asked this question by a number of persons. You're here to consult with us on the Constitution reform. But I've been asked, is the whole Constitution up for grabs for renewal? Or are there elements of the Constitution currently that is protected?
There are no elements in the Constitution that are protected. Once we sit down and once we've heard from everyone, then we would have a better idea in terms of what people are thinking. Like, for example, we've received notes that suggest that the preamble should have in A, B, C, and D. So it's a question of when we sit down and during our consultations, what we agree or disagree on, etc.
Okay. Thank you for that. My second point is that it's something which I've recently come used to and dislike. And I noticed that wherever we go these days, we speak of the diaspora, Barbadian diaspora. I have an issue with that. The diaspora has actually sprung from the slavery time and is only linked to the slaves and is linked to the Jews. I do not believe we are being forced to come to the UK or to be resettled in the UK. I believe we are all Barbadians. We are Barbadian, overseas Barbadians. So I prefer us to use the term Bajans abroad rather than diaspora. We are not a diaspora. We're not forced to be here. And that's basically, I think the Constitution, when it actually is reformed, should reflect that we are overseas Barbadians or we are Barbadians living overseas.
Well, I don't think it speaks to diaspora either.
I just making sure that's minuted.
But I take your point, and well said.
Okay.
And I will strike that word from my vocab.
Thank you very much. I think I'll leave the rest for everybody else to speak about, but I will hopefully present a paper tomorrow on behalf of a number of Barbadians. Okay. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. My name is Jennifer Connell. I'm a Barbadian born in Reading. The question I have, and it's all around citizenship and encouraging people to come to Barbados to live. I have citizenship. I've had it for many years. I had it before I was married. And I still have my citizenship in my maiden name, purely because it is very difficult for me to change it, because I have to do it. I'm being told I have to do it in Barbados. I live here. Is it going to be made easier for people who have citizenship from this country to be able to make amendments from this country?
That's correct. I'm looking at the DG, but he isn't looking at me for some reason. As I was looking at you, sir, to see whether or not you can assist in terms of whether or not that's correct. There must be some mechanism.
Sure it is. Good evening, everyone. My name is Charles Morris, and I am the Deputy High Commissioner. I heard people talking about they're from Boscobel. I am from Blackness.
Excuse me.
Now, we have had a number of inquiries regarding citizenship, regarding the certificate, and we have answered them as they came to us. Only today, we responded to one, and very often there are various issues regarding citizenship or regarding the citizenship document, and therefore, as long as they're brought to our attention, then we address them. All right, so all these issues we can address. The other thing is that if we look at
in 2023, though, does someone actually need to leave the UK with the documents?
No.
And go to immigration?
No, that is not true.
That's what I want to hear.
They send them to us, and we make all the necessary arrangements, and then we send them down. We even help persons to correct any mistakes, and we send them down. They come back.
Yeah.
We
can't take a picture for you.
Exactly. No, it's not the new ID.
So Ms. Connell, what exactly is your challenge?
My challenge is that I have been told by the High Commission, possibly not this administration, but other administrations, that I have to be physically in Barbados to change my details and receive a passport and an ID card.
Your certificate was before you were married.
Mm-hmm.
You got married, and now you want to have your citizenship registered in your...
Of course.
All right.
And if you can now do it in this country, I'm not aware, and I know a lot of people that aren't aware of that.
Contact Mr. Morris. Yes. Contact Mr. Morris. That seems inconsistent with a modern Barbados.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll let you know how I get on.
Charles, we're going to flag it because, as I said, our remit is also to look at the laws generally, to see how we can improve the good order and governance of our country. And something like that seems a bit archaic.
Well, all I can say is that there are times when persons have come with change of name, but there are certain documents which we would ask for to verify anything that is to be done.
Right.
So it is okay to say you want these things changed. For example, persons come to us for passports for citizenship, and they say that, especially with citizenship, normally it is easier to get your document through your father. Okay? And the reason is simple. Your father may have married a lady, and the lady takes his name. All right? So therefore, if you come now to gain citizenship from your mother's perspective, then we will first have to know that she is Barbadian, number one, and two, that she would have the necessary documentation to prove that she is this person's wife. So it is a matter of presenting the documentation to the Barbados High Commission in London.
All right. That's it, Jennifer? Right, are we going to take another observation, another piece of input, please? Yes, do take the microphone now. Sir, I won't say your name. I'll let you say your name. Introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Rodney Harewood. My name is Rodney Harewood. I live in Reading. I was born in Silver Hill, Christchurch. Now, COVID forced us to embrace digitization and basically touching on some of the various items that have been raised. I think something that we've got to do, right, is to actually ensure that a lot of the processes that we have actually embrace more digitization. So that if it's applying for changes of the citizenship, one's name, etc., passports, all of that, we should, embrace that fully. It shouldn't be a case of us having to send documents to the High Commission in the UK for that to be sent down for it to come back.
No.
So that's my comment.
Right. And I.
Well taken.
Well, sorry, go on.
No, I mean, it's well taken, and I know that the government of Barbados is pushing digitization in many different areas, and it's a work in process. So as they get to each stage, they will work through it, and it's a good point. I mean, the point is relevant. Yeah, very good point.
Yeah, yeah.
Good evening. My name's Carol Burnett. I'm a second-generation Bajan, living here in Reading. I have obviously quite long ties with Barbados. My question is with regards to my Bajan ID certificate. Kind of lends into a couple of the conversations we've already had. The ID card, according to the Electoral and Boundaries Commission, the old ID card ceases to be valid at the end of this month, so 31st. Yes, there is an online registration for it, but what I wanted to find out is some of the online registrations, they've had issues since that was implemented. How or why is there not, again, a situation whereby Bajans living abroad wanting to update their ID card, why isn't there a facility for us to be able to do it from abroad? You've mentioned about making, our lives as citizens easier to be able to obtain, be it citizenship, be it passport, be it an ID card. And the challenges seem to be very long. Yet the welcome stamp, which birthed during lockdown, was implemented. I was so proud of that welcome stamp. It was implemented so swiftly and so smoothly and brought into operation very, very quickly, as non-nationals were able to participate and get their welcome stamp and go down to Barbados. But as a Bajan, whether you've got the right to, it's very, very difficult if you're living abroad to be able to gain access to some of the fundamental documentations that we're actually entitled to. So that really is my question. Why is it so difficult to be able to either renew documentations that you have or to apply? And my other point is my sister and my brother, we're a family of 4 children. Unfortunately, our mother passed away. two of us, myself and my brother, we have our citizenship by descent from my mum. My older sister and my younger brother have applied in January for their citizenship by descent from my mum. We have all the relevant documentation. There is a discrepancy, unfortunately, in birth certificate for my sister, birth certificate in my brother, but we were able to get across that by using the letters of administration, using our documentation to prove that my sister and my brother we are all siblings, all from the same mum. But it's taken such a long time. We're now in March. We submitted the application in January last year, and we're now in March, and the documentation, we had confirmation in December that it was sent down to Barbados, and we have not been able to gain any further information as of today. My sister sent an email 2 weeks ago. She actually rung. We have a contact in the Barbados High Commission in London. She rung her today, and unfortunately we've not been able to get in contact with her. But I give you this scenario just to sort of show you, as Bajans living in this country, or probably other countries, but particularly here, some of the difficulties that we had. And obviously, if we're in Barbados, we can go down to the High Commission, we can go down to immigration. But living abroad, trying to go through that process, which can be lengthy, it's one, very frustrating, but it's a God-given right that if two of us have got it, and we're all on our mum's passport, Bajan passport from 1976, I think, or 1975, it is just a process of one person looking at it and seeing, tying it all up with all the relevant documentation that they've asked us for. We've given it to them, and we're still actually waiting for an update from Barbados. Now, we're due to go down in June, and I said to my sister last year, I doubt very much we'll hear anything. I hope we do, but I doubt very much we'll hear anything. And when we go down in June, we can actually go down in person and find out what's happened to it. But as I say, I was proud of the welcome stamp. I still am very proud of the welcome stamp. It's brought a lot of money into Barbados by all the people that have participated in it. But when you're trying to deal with getting a citizenship or getting your ID card from abroad, it's very, very difficult. So we know it can be done. That's the thing about it, and that's what makes it frustrating. I know Barbados can do it, so let's do it for some of the people that they want to actually attract back to Barbados and make it a little bit easier for us to be able to do that. Thank you.
Carol, I wish I could sit here and say to you that everything runs smoothly, and that you should have had an answer. But I know that the answer in terms, how long did it take you to get your own application process?
I was actually in Barbados at the time, and a bit of a funny story, I made myself a bit of a nuisance to immigration. I would go down to immigration a couple of times a week to chase up my citizenship application, to the point where the immigration officer said to me, "You as Bajan as me, you're trying to get a job or do something down there in Barbados, you just say to them, you're Bajan. You are as Bajan as me. It is just a case of you having your little tiny certificate, hand-typed, to say that you are officially a Bajan." So for me, it took about 8 months. And at the time, people said, "Oh, you got it really quickly." I said, "Yeah, because they know me down there on first name terms."
And that's exactly the point I wanted to make, though. Unfortunately, it does take some time.
But in this day and age, you shouldn't have to physically be there to chase, make yourself a nuisance. You shouldn't.
Yes, and do not encourage your older sister to make herself a nuisance. But it does take some time. Mm-hmm. And all I can say to you is that, things are slowly improving. And hopefully, the next meeting that we have of this time, whoever are here will be able to say that they can say that, between 2023 and whenever the meeting, in fact, that things are how they should be and stuff. It's a process. I work, let's say I use the corporate affairs department, for example. There's some parts of it are automated. Other parts I have to get it from St. Philip and drive down to Warren's and stay up in the line, sometimes for an hour, sometimes longer, etc. And I was a former attorney general, and I still have to do it. And I find it frustrating, but you know, I have to accept that we're making haste slowly, in some aspects. And in your case, where there's an error, obviously you know that it means that contributed to why it's taking a bit longer, right? But Charles, being the good man that he is, once you give him your reference, your file reference, he will follow up for you, and he will call you and let you know, because he doesn't want you to be a nuisance and call him every day. Right?
That's absolutely what I was hoping for. to make sure that he's clearly identified to us. So before we leave, I can make myself a little bit of a nuisance.
Give your file references to Mr. Morris.
Yeah.
Right? And let him follow up and come back to you.
That's great.
Right?
Thank you very much.
And if he does not come back to you, I'm going to give you Mary Redmond's number. Call her.
Well, what I was going to say also, I can make myself a nuisance to this gentleman, but also to yourself as well.
No, that's what I was going to
say.
But seriously,
No.
Mr. Morris will be happy to follow up for you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, all right.
Right, have we got any more contributions to it to be heard? Let's have at least one more. My stepson is on the phone.
Why?
That I never find.
Why we can't be brothers? Right. So this is the main contribution I wanted to make. I wasn't even prepared for the first intervention. My name is Ezra. I'm from Moscowville. Now, in Birmingham, Reverend Morris mentioned the U.S. Constitution, and to answer a question which was somewhat mischievous in the nature about how constitutions are formed and ratified and the time it takes in between republicanism sometimes and actually getting a document in hand. Now, the USA Constitution is 1789, as Reverend Morris would have said. But then there were amendments put in which became known as the U.S. Bill of Rights in 1791. Now, last Friday in the estimates debate, this is Friday the 10th of March, the Attorney General was presenting his case for, this is the Honorable Dale Marshall, was presenting his case for the increase of the budget that he needed for his office. Now, the police came into focus, and there were some comments made concerning the organization. Now, the comments went in to say, things like the police in terms of transparency and how we now have body camera technology, and there were some other comments made about the use of technology sometimes, which is not always positive, and we're talking cell phones. And it was mentioned that almost every time you see the police operating, you see someone with a cell phone hoping to catch police out. Now, the thing is, to me, that's a very dim view of looking at the entire situation. The same U.S. Constitution, they thought it necessary for their Bill of Rights and their First Amendment to seek a few important things that they hold dear. Everybody knows about the Second Amendment and their guns that we don't want to deal with, and the Fifth Amendment about pleading the Fifth or staying silent. But the First Amendment speaks about things like freedom of the press, freedom to to have redress of our government, and freedom to associate. Now, I remember as a youngster, like first getting license and getting a car and going out, to places. My dad would always tell me, when the police gives an instruction to move and keep moving, that you have to leave the area and not come back. At the age, you mentioned that in his presentation, and he was saying that times have changed, that people would then stand up, challenge the police, and sometimes, be rude and that sort of thing. But I want to say that we've seen what body camera technology can do, and everybody knows about George Floyd, and we can see the benefit of also bystanders recording action from another view. I am in that field, and I would like to know that our Constitution explicitly protects the right of Barbadians to freely in public spaces record things that we want to record. Photography should not be considered a crime, public photography, unless you're doing things that are really not untoward, that we as adults should not really need to go into in this space. But that is very important to me as someone who is in the field, to be able to freely capture both positives and negatives of activities in public spaces. So I hope the Constitution protects that activity.
But Ezra, you would accept, though, that if the police says to you that they need the space from your monitor there down to the wall to conduct their investigation, that in fact that you should stand behind the space.
100%.
All right.
That is not what we're talking about. The police, to protect themselves, can obviously put up their cordons.
All right.
And protect their evidence, preserve their evidence. We're not talking about we're talking about actions that sometimes with things.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Come on, like we're adults.
Here's my comment on that. The police needs to accept, and it's new to them, accept that the body cam is there for their own protection. And similarly, that the cameras, once they're doing what they're supposed to do, that it can only be used for their benefit, right? To protect themselves. So if they're administering the law that they're supposed to do, you can take as many pictures as you like.
Right.
It doesn't change what they're doing. But I think part of the challenge that they have had, in all fairness to the other side, is that when they say John Brown to move beyond that corridor that they need, John Brown believes that in fact that he has a right to stand up and do what he feels like and tell the police whatever they feel like, et cetera, and their lives and that is problem.
Yeah.
But I accept what you're saying in terms of your right, because if the police comes into my house, it is my house, and they say they're conducting a search, they should not be able to tell me, take the camera down, and I don't have a right to see what they're doing.
Yeah, well, that to me is really extreme. But going back to, just to be clear, we're not talking about going beyond a police cordon. We're talking about almost like someone as an adult, another adult want to send you home or send you so far from a space that you can't observe what's going on. That's what I'm talking about. And in terms of the press.
Yeah, but as I said, you got to understand. Look, a couple of weeks ago, there was a murder down Baxter's Road, right? And they had more people on Baxter's Road observing the proceedings than they normally would have on Bridgetown Market Day, et cetera, et cetera. So you know what happened? I'm told that the emergency vehicles had problems getting through.
Yeah. So
it should not be.
Right. So I'm saying, I agree with what you're saying, to to some extent, as long as the activity doesn't interfere with them. They obviously have. And then just to follow on from that with the press.
But I'm going to say I agree with you, though, okay?
In principle, yeah.
Right, in principle.
Right, and then with the press, like recently in the UK, and I know in the US as well, there have been cases where journalists have been arrested. Again, freedom of the press needs to be protected in the Constitution. I think it should be right in the document. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you, Ezra.
My name is O'Neill Oliver. I was born in England, but I lived in Barbados most of my life. I am a journalist by profession. And just to make something clear, the only part of the world that you have copyright to your image is France. Freedom of the press in Barbados is open. No one can stop you from taking photographs at any point as long as you are not trespassing. I spent most of my life from 1984 until 2005 as a photographer in Barbados, working with The Nation, The Advocate, and as some would know, The Investigator. We, as journalists, perform duties which could be a bit on the edgy side sometimes, but we never get a problem with the police. We always work in collaboration with the police and the authorities.
But I think Ezra's comment went beyond journalists, though, in all fairness, right? Ezra, that's correct?
As a photographer,
yeah,
openly as a photographer, don't care where in the world I go, I have the freedom to photograph you as long as I'm not on your property, or as long as I'm not in France. France is the only country that the residents carry the copyright to their face, to their personal image.
Right.
Any other part of the world, you're free to photograph as long as you're not trespassing.
Yeah, it would be remiss of me not to come back to the mic after scolding everybody else to contribute to the mic. So yes, I was talking about the journalist is one level, but beyond journalism, because these days, basically the people are the journalists now. If you would see before, news agency would say we have some amateur video of X, Y, and Z. Nobody does that anymore. They just want video, or they want whatever content. So everybody technically can become a journalist at any point in time.
I just wanted to add to the discussion that when we talk about rights, and I understand what you're saying, we have rights, and everyone has a right to freedom of photographing in reasonable, but we also have a responsibility. And one of the problems that we are finding in Barbados is that everybody thinks I have a right to videotape.
Yes.
And I have a right to share this all around. But it might not just be a case of police brutality, it might be just other things. And recently, a few weeks ago, there was a fight between a schoolgirl and an adult lady in Tudor Street behind the police station. And the guy that was recording it said, I ain't stopping this fight, I want this recorded so I could send it to, what is it called, Naked Departure? Yes. He was bold enough to say that he is recording this so he can have it go viral. He didn't care whether the young girl should be pulled away from fighting with the older woman or the older woman pulled away. We have a responsibility along with the rights. So when we talk about rights, we need to talk about responsibilities. And so that our citizenship need to understand that it is not only about being able to record, but being able to build a society that we want decency and so on.
So I can understand this, though. So let's argue about this. So his responsibility was to do what?
I am saying that if you're going to stand up there and record a fight between a young girl and an older woman, you also have a responsibility to try to attempt to stop the fight.
Excuse me?
Or to call the police, or to call somebody, not only to record and say, well, I am recording this because I want it to go viral, I want to be famous. Basically, that's what he was saying in the video.
No, sorry.
That's what he said.
We're talking two different things.
But that's what he said in the video.
Does he have to intervene?
For me, as a responsible citizen, if he doesn't want to intervene, go and call the police.
But as a responsible citizen,
the police, he was right behind the police
Intervention.
station. And he was right behind the police station.
Calling the police
as a
is an
responsible
intervention.
citizen, he might want to get in his car and go on home safely.
That too. That too.
Okay, me, a photographer.
Yeah.
If I saw that fight, in all honesty, I'm going to get as much photographs as possible because for me, that is money coming to me.
Right.
Who says that person wasn't being paid?
Possible.
To produce the video.
Possible. Because
That
they
is
get,
their
it goes
liveli- that is their livelihood.
I have a difficulty with that. That's my personal view.
Now, I understand that. I understand that.
I could understand a journalist wanting to take pictures and say, well, this is going to be news. But not somebody saying that I want this to go viral on something else. But maybe he's getting money. You're right.
Can we hear Gail Atkins's view on this, please? Because we haven't heard her this evening.
No, Gail.
We haven't heard you, ma'am. I want to hear you speak, please.
So,
this is not my forte, really. I'm
speaking to the mic.
I'm sorry. This is not my forte, really. I'm not a legal person to give you a legal perspective on this issue. I can just give you a moral or ethical response to what I am hearing. And I don't think that I differ from Commissioner Balbuli in terms of the intent. And I think that's what he's speaking to, the intent. Yes. What are you intending to do with the footage? Is it malicious, or is it really related to your professional or your profession, as the gentleman over there just spoke to? So that would be my response.
Thank you.
Mr. Moderator and Chair, I have listened to all of the debate about rights and responsibility. Yes, our rights may be guaranteed in a constitution, but there's also a responsibility by citizens, and that more so than anything else is what builds a society. Correct. You know, I've heard about the Charter of Barbados. I've heard about the Constitutional Reform Commission. And yes, these are wonderful things. But you know what attracts me? Is the Charter of Barbados. Because it calls all of us to be responsible citizens. To be responsible citizens. And if we are responsible citizens, then we would want the best there is for everyone. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Charter calls us to do. And that is what, even though we are going to have a constitution, but never let us forget that we are our brother's keeper. Agreed. And that our brother's destiny is also in our hands.
Exactly.
Yes. Well said.
Exactly.
As time is advancing, let's take one more question. Let's take one more issue to be discussed with. Some person who hasn't come up before, who's itching to come up, but just a bit tight to this. Come. Oh, is that George? That's the great George there. George, come on. You must come to the mic, man. He knows everything George does. Ask something about Calypso, man.
I really don't have a
Preservation of
question.
Calypso.
George Franklin. I live in Reading. Born in Passage Road, St. Michael, near Baptist Road. I think in Midnight.
I know Passage Road.
Yes. I really don't have any questions. My only concern is around the new ID card. Because the thing you can apply for it online. That's my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. You can apply for it. I live here, you can apply for it online, but I would need to go down to Barbados to collect it. Is that correct?
As far as I know, there were a number of issues relating to the rollout of the ID card. I heard someone on Brass Tacks, they were speaking, not someone, the person in charge, and they were in saying that there were a number of issues with the online process, and that's being sorted. That hasn't been corrected as far as I know as yet. So there's nothing online at this point in time. And I guess that needs to be sorted before anything could happen further.
Yes, you forced me to say something, Mr.
Well, I knew you would. I knew you would bring a constructive point. I knew you would. Right. I think we're just about here or there. It's been a wonderful and interesting debate. I'm sure you would agree. And I'd like to invite the Public Relations Officer and Acting Secretary of the Barbados and Friends Association here in Reading to give a vote of thanks. Mr. Richard Weeks, I thank you.
Mr. Hanks, sorry. Before the vote of thanks, I think it would be remiss of us if we didn't just give a quick summary in terms of the issues that were raised.
Okay.
I show our appreciation for the issues as they were raised.
Right.
So
the floor is yours.
Well, I was going to say Suleiman, I'm sure.
The DG took copious notes.
I'm sure. But you know, we did receive, in spite of the fact that you would notice that I tried to, you know, to make people smile, etc. Because the Constitution as itself is a very dry, boring topic. But the issues that we touched on, you'd be very surprised to see how far and wide that we touched tonight, from human rights to access to beaches, access to justice, disabilities, citizenship, LGBTQI rights,
accessing documents online, digitally.
Access to beaches,
documents
rights to whether or not you should have rights to vote, regardless of where you are in the world, as long as you're a Barbadian citizen, land ownership, some questions in terms of the ID card, which we're going to look into and respond. My friend Carol, my new best friend is Carol. Carol has the DG's number. She's going to call him, so that any of you who have challenges will know the process. Freedom of the press, or freedom to utilize your equipment, regardless of whether or not you're a member of the press or otherwise. You know, so we did. You know, we still managed to touch on, and I'm sure that my notes are not comprehensive. There's still several areas. Overseas voting, and so you're all also free at any time, if you wish, to submit any other ideas that you might have and write in to us. That's why Suleiman would have given you our email address, etc. Just to reiterate, our email address is constitutionalreform@barbados.gov.bb. It's on our website, right? And I'm sure that the High Commission will have all of our contact details, right? What's your number, DG? It's changed tomorrow. It's changed tomorrow. Right. So personally, and on behalf of my colleagues, we truly want to, you know, thank you for your individual and collective input over the last 2 hours, and it has been 2 hours. But because of the wide-ranging discussions we've had, it hasn't felt like that. All right, and finally, if anyone is buying Guinness, I'm available when we're finished.
Thank you, Richard. Yes. Richard Weeks will now present the vote of thanks. Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Richard Weeks, from parents from Christchurch and St Phillips. Right. So first of all, I'd like to give a vote of thanks to the Constitutional Reform Commission. Thank you for coming today. The esteemed panel members, thank you very much for giving us your time. Chris Blackman in Barbados and our viewers in Barbados. I'd like to thank Charles Morris, the Deputy High Commissioner, for attending and giving input today. Thank you very much. High Commission, Betty Lewis, who's, again, you know, we've met her before, and she comes along and supports and shares and spreads the love, so to speak, with us. So thank you very much, Betty and her team. I'd like to thank the technical staff today. Thank you very much. The Atrium for providing this facility, and Dolphin's Caribbean Cuisines. And I hope I haven't missed anyone out. I'd like to, I'm getting there. You're jumping the gun. And I'd like to thank, for all his hard work tonight and being calm and collected as usual, our moderator, Master of the Ceremonies, Jeff Hines. Thank you very much. And a final round of applause. I'd like to thank you all for attending today and making this session worthwhile. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, indeed, Richard. Thank you very much. So we've actually come to the end of this part of the occasion, but now we can go next door. Are we going to socialize? Are we going to talk? Are we going to? I can talk about the press because plastic bags say the press don't ask the right questions in Barbados. But apart from that, wonderful gathering. Let's go to part 2 next door, and it'll be fed. Yes. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.